After the Cultural Revolution, to resolve the crisis threatening its survival, the CCP resorted to the reform and opening up policy. Overnight, the party went from taking class struggle as the guideline to placing building the economy at the fore. The slogan of buckling up for revolution was replaced with everything for the sake of money, as if the CCP had made a U-turn. Judging from appearance, it seems that the Communist Party had changed its course, and the collapse of the international communist camp reinforced the belief that humankind was rid of the communist menace. Is that true? People might put a great deal of weight upon whether the Chinese society is more capitalist or more socialist. For the communist evil spectre, that is irrelevant. As stressed earlier, the truth is that communism is not merely a doctrine, a social system, or a failed experiment, but an evil spectre bent on destroying culture, morality, and the human race. Only by recognizing that the ultimate goal of communism is the destruction of humankind can we put the pieces together and understand the roadmap, proposals, flowcharts, and operating manual by which it executes its schemes to destroy humankind. The Communist Party's mass slaughters have never ceased, but are now carried out in secret. Sometimes the party kills people, sometimes it lets them live. It may drive people to the depths of famine, and later let them eat until their stomachs burst. It once tried to clamp down on the slightest expression of desire, and then suddenly allowed every indulgence. It sometimes attacked Chinese culture, yet later rehabilitated Chinese culture. Sometimes it labels itself as socialism, other times as capitalism. Its essence is its covert but real plot to eradicate traditional culture and morality, rendering people anti-divine and inhuman. No matter how many transformations the Communist Party has undergone, its true nature will never change. The specter of communism is composed of hatred. To destroy humanity, it leads those under its manipulation to oppose the divine, attack traditional culture, and slander their ancestors. In addition to its propensity for killing all the way, the Communist Party also excels in deception. Killing and deception correspond with the CCP catchphrase of tough on one hand, soft on the other. Both stem from two of the party's basic characteristics: the philosophy of struggle and atheism, which are rooted in hatred of the divine. Killing and deception go hand in hand. In killing there is deception, and in deception there is killing. With regards to deception, the Communist Party is an expert in the full range of trickery and manipulation, from man's most deeply held ideas to the standards for determining right and wrong, good and evil, and the bottom lines of human morality. Deception is omnipresent. Scams for money, swindles for sex, fake cigarettes, fake alcohol, tainted rice, and toxic milk are just the tip of the iceberg. These are all the inevitable consequences of the Communist Party's corrupting morality. How does the Communist Party deceive people? Are people so easily manipulated as they want to get a job or a promotion, make money, or have a mistress? Of course, there are many people like this, especially in today's society, which has been debased to the point where money and debauchery are basic creeds. But at the beginning, weren't there also many youthful rebels who ran off from their wealthy families and powerful positions to take part in the revolution? Everyone has his or her divine nature. These ideas and sense of belonging transcends the mortal world. Be it the nirvana in Buddhism or the return to one's true self in Taoism, the inner meaning of divinity was implanted in human beings at the time of creation by gods. That yearning itself is something innate that exists in the depths of every human soul. The Communist Party took advantage of these beautiful hopes, using lefty causes like the fate of the state and the future of the nation, and grand concepts like the liberation of all humankind, and even a community of shared future for humankind, to deceive not just the common people, but also the very leaders of the party itself, except for Jiang Zemin, whose crimes know no limit. Most leaders of the party are also humans who have fallen prey to the Communist specter's deception. They are victims as well as perpetrators. The specter of communism made use of their personal ambitions and perhaps their genuine desires to serve the people, to carry out a monstrous sham. What it steals away is their divine nature and ideals hidden deep inside. What it robs away is the inborn divine nature that could transcend the material body, the same way sections of railway are replaced. The Spectre deceptively replaces people's deep spiritual yearning for the path to return to heaven, with the Communist Party's hell-bound path of a heaven on earth. Each action advocated under the banner of the Communist Party is actually the operation of the evil Spectre, so it can by no means escape its agenda as well as its ultimate goal. The Specter of Communism is well aware that everyone has their knowing side, and humanity is prone to moments of clarity. To mask a lie as colossal as the lie of communism requires coercive means and greater lies. Hence, killing all the way and deception all the way make up its indispensable characteristics. In order to destroy humanity, communism sows chaos in society and disrupts people's minds with falsehood. That is the reason why it emphasizes its key phrase of struggle. Struggle comes in such forms as inciting the poor against the landowners, and the 5 red classes against the 5 black classes. For the sake of struggle, communism must divide people into the people versus the enemy, friends versus dissenters. The CCP raises villains to the high heavens and pushes good people down to a living hell. The outcome of these struggles is that the evil people are elevated while good people are trampled upon. One of the most vicious features of communism is its use of corruption to corrupt the human heart. The Communist Party subjects people to a lifelong program of transformation according to the needs of the evil Spectre. It reverses truth and falsehood and subverts the criteria for discerning good and evil. Good is cast as bad, and bad upheld as good, as the saying goes. Ancient traditions are abandoned. The more debased everyday behavior is, the greater the Spectre's success in the destructive aims, destroying humanity relentlessly. After the people became disillusioned with communist ideals, the CCP fell back on its material philosophy to encourage the entire population in the pursuit of money and sensual pleasure. The evil Spectre opened the floodgates of human desire, and put every deviated aspect of society to work as its weapon to maintain its power and destroy humanity. Decades of constant corruption have resulted in the drastic collapse of modern Chinese morality, blocking the path to heaven and opening the gates of hell. The Communist Party has dragged all of society to the edge of ruin. Karl Marx took up the devil's cult and underwent an evil thought transformation. Lenin was also a cult follower. He rebelled against God and hailed destruction and annihilation. When Lenin was 16 years old, he tore the cross from his neck, spat at it, and stepped on it. He once said, "Any religious ideas or belief in God, or thoughts related to God are disgusting and loathing." Stalin deployed the machinery of the Soviet Union and used state power to promote atheism and suppress religious faith. Stalin imposed atheist ideology upon the entire country, turning it into an atheist nation where barriers between the church and state were torn down. He proclaimed, "Anyone who uses religious prejudices of the masses to undermine national stability should be subjected to punishment of at least 3 years in prison, up to the death penalty." Bukharin, a top official in the Soviet Communist Party, described Stalin thusly, "He is not a man, but a devil." As the lyrics of the Communist Party's Internationale go, there are no supreme saviors, neither God, nor Caesar, nor magistrate. This piece, essentially a declaration against God, has been played countless times at Communist Party meetings. In the song King Wen from the Greater Odes of the Book of Songs, it reads,
无念而祖欲修厥德，永言配命自求多福,
which means, think always of thine ancestors' grace, and be diligent in cultivating thy virtue. Follow always the mandate of heaven, and bountiful blessings will come naturally. One's ancestors are the origin of one's life. Therefore, ancestral reverence is a basic requirement for a human being. Hence, in traditional Chinese culture, respecting the forefathers and practicing filial piety are given the greatest importance. And it has a very profound source and more important reasons. As the chosen central kingdom, China is under the all-inclusive auspices of the divine. The broad and profound traditional Chinese culture was imparted by the divine. In the remote ancient times, when deities and humans coexisted, the ancestors of Chinese people bore direct witness to the divine's grace, with supreme gratitude toward the gods, and supreme devotion to the missions granted by the divine. They safeguarded reverently the blessings of the divine, and passed them on from generation to generation. People around the world hold in high esteem their great ancestors and emperors. Julius Caesar in ancient Rome, the Sun King, Louis XIV of France, and Frederick the Great of Prussia were all well revered by the subjects and honoured by later generations. The faces of the 4 great American presidents carved on Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, US, are respectfully visited by tens of thousands each year. It's common sense that cursing one's ancestors constitutes a tremendous insult, as deceiving one's master and destroying one's forefathers is regarded as thoroughly perverse and the worst offence, to utterly cut off the relations between humans and their gods and ancestors. The Communist Party must take the lead in condemning the ancestral figures, denigrating and abandoning traditional culture. In the view of the CCP and its shameless scholars, none of the emperors, generals, ministers, scholars, or fine ladies in ancient China were good people. The extent to which our regime would go in castigating its own ethnic ancestors was unprecedented in world history. Prior to usurping power, the CCP used some deviated intellectuals who held nihilistic views towards Chinese culture as weapons to attack Chinese culture. They did not necessarily uphold the party's banner, yet the impact they made was what the party wanted, but was not able to attain at the time. The voices from sources that were seemingly independent of the Communist Party were even more deluding. A typical example was the writer Lu Xun. Mao Zedong appraised Lu Xun as the greatest and most valiant flag-bearer in the new cultural army. Lu Xun is the chief general of China's Cultural Revolution. Lu Xun's path is the path of the Chinese people's new culture. Due to the CCP's heavy promotion of Lu Xun and making his works a focal point of the secondary school curriculum, Lu Xun's blow against traditional culture was so broad, powerful, and dreadful, surpassing the efforts of many of the CCP's formal members. To this day, Lu Xun's various irresponsible, malicious, and bizarre arguments continue to leave a large negative impact on Chinese scholars. Resentful of the hardships he suffered in life, Lu Xun said that he always regarded the Chinese with the greatest disdain. The Communist Specter took the cultural scoundrel's resentment and used it against traditional Chinese culture. Lu Xun's attitude towards Chinese traditional culture and history was one of complete rejection. In his first short story, A Madman's Diary, Lu Xun used the protagonist's voice to declare that all of China's history could be summed up in 2 words: eating people. After the CCP took power, it launched a series of political campaigns. In the campaign to destroy the 4 olds, and in the course of beating, smashing, and looting, all human civilization's achievements so far were obliterated in the name of feudalism, capitalism, and revisionism. Many sages and heroes in China's 5,000-year-old history were condemned by the CCP using class analysis approaches. The massive condemnation reached a peak during the Cultural Revolution. The slaughter of the elite created a major chasm in culture. Indoctrinated by the CCP's atheism and party culture, several generations of people now have very little knowledge about traditional culture. After the 1980s, the CCP changed its tactics, going from violent destruction to slandering in disguise. Its methods became concealed, making it difficult to detect and prevent. The CCP and its scholars diminished, vilified, and made vulgar the ancient figures. They are made to serve as a contrast to the great, glorious, and correct party, or as historical basis for the shabby behavior of some Chinese people nowadays. As per the CCP's interpretations, the romance of the Three Kingdoms promotes stupid loyalty, and the journey to the west is a tale of feudal superstition. All what the outlaws of the marsh and dream of the Red Chamber are talking about is class struggle. The party's interpretations set aside the inner meanings of morality, cultivation, heavenly will, and reincarnation. The CCP deliberately oriented people's attention to the so-called dross of traditional culture, and regarded traditional culture as nothing more than eunuchs, foot-binding concubines, and their battles in palaces. The brainwashed scholars slandered Chinese emperors and ancestors blatantly, abandoning traditional culture thoroughly with the labels of autocracy and feudal society. In the cultural retrospect of the 20th century, some attributed the so-called inferior breed of the Chinese people to traditional Chinese culture. Such understanding itself falls into the trap of the evil spectre. It is in fact the party which is the culprit, causing and amplifying the inferiority. The behavioral flaws of modern Chinese stem from their deviation from 5,000 years of divinely imparted culture. After the CCP usurped power, it deliberately strengthened those inferiorities and magnified people's demon nature without limitation, resulting in a drastic moral decline of Chinese people. The Communist Party calls brainwashing thought reform, which is accompanied by coercive means, so there is no way to willfully escape. It also resorts to various cruel spiritual torture to force people to comply. For the Chinese Communist regime itself, all means of brainwashing are used to make people accept the communist values and ideology. Atheism and the philosophy of class struggle, which are the so-called proletarian worldview. Essentially, those viewpoints turn out to be the Communist Specter's devastating blow to each individual's soul, and systematic corruption of the Chinese people's inherent traditional values. Traditionally, the Chinese judged their political regime's legitimacy based on the mandate of heaven. If a king lacked virtue and acted against the principles of righteous kingship, such as respecting heaven, obeying ancestral decrees, practicing benevolent governance and loving the people, then the mandate of heaven would change, leading to a replacement of the existing dynasty with a new one. According to the mandate of heaven, CCP does exactly the opposite of what heaven mandates. It respects neither the divine nor ancestral codes, and fails to govern with benevolence, which means its regime is utterly illegitimate. To seize power and boost its legitimacy, the CCP has to purge people's traditional thoughts and instead indoctrinate people with atheism and the philosophy of struggle. It hails Marx's seemingly plausible but absurd five-stage historical social development theory as the truth, and twists Chinese history as a testimony of Marx's theory despite the gaps. As such, the CCP claims that the historically inevitable class struggle has led China into communism, thus legitimizing its political takeover. At the same time, communism is hailed as the so-called sacred mission of humankind and history's inevitable choice. The objective is to replace the traditional idea of the mandate of heaven. Morality originates from the divine. The divine is eternal. Moral standards are also eternal, and should never be determined by human beings, nor should it change depending on who is in power. When the CCP defines morality, it is usurping the throne of the divine. By stipulating morality using its own terms, the CCP labels all of its evilness as moral, and boldly declares itself as always correct. The ethical standards set by the CCP are subject to change at any time as required by the CCP. Whether they follow a well-defined religious belief or not, traditional Chinese regard heaven's law and conscience as universal values. Through the process of thought reform, The CCP's primary target of annihilation is heaven's law and conscience. The proletarian viewpoint does not accept universal values or any moral code beyond the classes. The CCP judges one's morality by his or her class position. Traditional Chinese regard government officials without corruption as good officials. According to the Communist Party's viewpoint, for the officials of the counter-revolutionary class, the more upright they are, the more they are committed to maintaining counter-revolutionary ruling, or helping the counter-revolutionary class to shake the working people's guard. Hence, they are deemed by the party as even worse. The Chinese also believe that a human's life is as vital as heaven. Whenever they see somebody's life is in danger, they will stand up and offer to rescue. However, the party believes that humanitarian principles should be attributed as revolutionary and that one can only treat party comrades humanitarianly. The crueler one treats counter-revolutionaries, the more clear-minded one's class standpoint becomes. Consequently, from the party's viewpoint, as long as something is labelled as revolutionary, progressive or socialist, etc., no matter how evil it is or how far away from people's basic sense of conscience it may be, it is conforming to the historical trend and is absolutely correct. For anything that is labelled feudalist, bourgeois, attacking the proletariat, and so on, no matter how noble it is in traditional thinking, it is automatically wrong and counter-revolutionary. The standard of good and evil is thus completely reversed. The names of these labels vary in different historical periods. Sometimes it is called attacking party leaders, subverting state power, and at other times the label could be promoting superstition or anti-science or dividing the motherland, etc. By simply claiming that the party is the historical choice of the sacred undertaking, anything opposing it becomes an object of criticism. Of course, this value, which is the core of the proletarian viewpoint, would not be naturally accepted by the Chinese people. Countless political campaigns have been launched by the CCP. Sometimes it killed people to showcase its authority and to destroy beliefs and culture. Sometimes it fights for power and eradicates dissidents. Whatever the cause, the evilness is all conducted in the name of revolution. The CCP rebuilt a set of anti-moral values under the framework of communism. The cruel reality caused by the CCP made people realize that traditional values and reality are incompatible with each other. If they don't give up traditional values, they will hit a wall everywhere, run into trouble, and become susceptible to getting themselves killed in a worst-case scenario. Even for those who are not the direct target of criticism, they cautiously bury their traditional moral thinking deep within, and know better than to accidentally reveal any traditional values in their words or behavior. They are the criteria for measuring behavior. Those deep-buried values have already lost their function. Although they have not been completely annihilated, they are actually dying. As such, the Communist Specter's goal of destroying humankind has been achieved. In the 1950s, the CCP launched a series of so-called thought reform campaigns, such as the campaign to denounce the biography of Wu Xun, the ideological reform campaign, criticizing Liang Shuming, Yu Pingbo, and Hu Xi, the anti-Hu Feng, the anti-rightist campaign, and so on. Both the Yan'an rectification movement earlier and the Cultural Revolution later also involved large-scale thought reforms. However, the rectification movement and the Cultural Revolution were accompanied by massive killing. In the 1950s, along with these campaigns, there were also the bloody land reform, the 3 anti and the 5 anti-campaigns, the campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries, and so on. One's attitude was seen as being dishonest or resisting reform. The consequences were equally unimaginable. Looking back at how those once independent souls struggled and eventually yielded or were annihilated in previous campaigns, one thing that is certain is that even those who were not directly subjected to physical harm had also suffered psychological trauma in the process, which was no less damaging than physical violence. According to the writer Shen Congwen, all students were forced to think till dawn without any sleep, and many cried in pain and sorrow. The mathematician Hua Luogeng had a hard time defending himself in gatherings, so he chose to commit suicide, which was luckily discovered early and he was able to survive. During the Cultural Revolution, the horrible violent killings caused millions of deaths in peacetime and bloodshed over thousands of miles. However, the Cultural Revolution was a disaster even worse than Stalin's massacres. The characteristics of the Cultural Revolution involved the participation of all people, everyone either engaged in fighting or was being fought. During the slaughter in the former Soviet Union, Stalin killed people and sent them to the Gulag concentration camps, but he wasn't keen on ideological destruction. In the Cultural Revolution, the cruelty of the CCP's killing methods was comparable to that of Stalin's killing, but the number of victims was even higher. Although the object of each struggle involved only a portion of the people, the real victims included the entire population. It was not the secret police and the executioners who participated in the fighting and torture, but the victims' colleagues, classmates, subordinates, students, friends and neighbours who carried out critical struggle against them. Those who did not participate in the fighting and torture of the struggles were seen as sympathising with the class enemy, and thus unstable in their positions. They immediately had to face the same fate as those of the victims. Various kinds of abuse, torture and murder did not occur in the Gulag concentration camp, which is isolated from society. Tragedies could occur any time in the daily living spaces that people are familiar with. Reporting and criticizing each other became the norm, even between brothers and sisters, husband and wife, and father and son. Everyone was vying for positive political performance. Otherwise, the suspicion of holding an unclear position would fall on them. The more you struggled against the people most closely related to you, the more stable your standpoint was. In December 1966, Mao Zedong's secretary Hu Qiaomu was taken to the Beijing Iron and Steel Institute as a subject of struggle gatherings. On that day, Hu Qiaomu's daughter went on the stage to criticize her father, shouting out, "Smash Hu Qiaomu's dog head." Although she did not really smash her father's dog head, one middle school student did smash his own father's head. "In my family, my brother Yu Luoke," the writer said, "at that time there was a capitalist family living in Dongshi sub-district, Beijing. The Red Guards beat the old couple to half dead and forced their son to beat his parents. The son, who was just a high school student, smashed his father's head with a dumbbell and turned insane himself." This kind of movement with people struggling against one another almost completely swept out traditional Chinese social values rooted in family ethics from the hearts of the Chinese people, causing the total collapse of the traditional social value system. This kind of mutual disclosure and criticism have formed a prevalent culture phenomenon in society. People are competing to express their loyalty to the CCP through various radical methods, to be consistent with the CCP on the issue of defying human morality. The more defiant one is against human morality and yet treats it as being moral, the closer one is to where the social trends are. Therefore, this does not only deviate from the values of traditional culture, but also forms a field of CCP culture in society. The culture passed down for thousands of years in China suffered devastating damage short after the CCP took power. The environment keeps changing, so does the situation. Today, the CCP is calling for the restoration of traditional culture. As we probe into the reasons behind, we come up with the following points. First of all, the Marxist ideology is a sheer failure, having no value to show globally. When the US presidents visit China, they are likely to pick a famous university to give a speech and share the universal values of the United States with young people in China. However, the leaders of the party, by contrast, become underground party members as soon as they step onto American soil. They never dare to speak to any American university students about their so-called advanced culture, such as communism, religion is opium, or atheism. Second, in order to protect its power, the party tries to restore traditional culture. The generations who grew up instilled with class struggle also pose a threat to the party itself, so it hopes to resolve the crisis with idioms like "harmony is valuable," which are taken from traditional culture but without the context. Third, traditional culture is something deposited deep within the heart and soul of Chinese people, and there are people yearning for and seeking their cultural roots. It is the combined impact of the above factors that leaves the party with no choice at all but to seek the nutrients for its survival from traditional culture, even though the party won't be truly relieved until traditional culture is thoroughly destroyed, regardless of the CCP's motives. This is testimony illustrating the tremendous positive power of traditional Chinese culture. When it comes to restoring tradition, it is necessary to thoroughly reverse the previous destructive procedures. Only after abandoning, exposing, and criticizing the various initial absurdities, and in retrospect, can one talk about the genuine recovery of traditional culture. Only after the Marxist atheist spell on scholars is smashed into pieces, can one stand on the starting line of restoring traditions. Created by the divine, the Chinese traditional culture is a semi-divine culture with universal values. When embracing atheism, how could the party manage to align itself with a traditional culture based on belief in the divine? Therefore, we witness that scholars of the Red Dynasty were trying to verify that Confucius, Lao Tzu, and even Shakyamuni were atheists. They interpreted the Analects of Confucius as meaning everyone should be a happy slave under the party's reign. The thoughts of the saints were connected with the message of the National Congress of the Communist Party. The ancient sages have become a popular subject to vulgarize and entertain on the internet. If restoring tradition comes from the people's genuine endeavors, then under the control of the CCP, all these efforts will end up being utilized as a footnote explanation for the party. For example, the phrase offering salvation to human beings has a specific meaning in religion. Monks should uphold their mission as monks. However, after learning the message of the 19th National Congress, the president of a certain Chinese religious association published a learning experience, arguing that offering salvation to human beings mean to help those believers who live in trouble, to protect their legal rights, and to solve their problems in production, work, and life. It sounds like religion is just an amateur union under the leadership of the Communist Party, without any trace of moral attainment or spiritual realms. While claiming to restore tradition, the CCP continues to infiltrate the Buddhist and Taoist temples as well as the religious academies by setting up the party's branches inside. It is also relentless in articulating how vital it is to strengthen the guiding role of Marxism with respect to traditional culture. If Marxism is so wise that it can guide traditional culture, then why bother to restore traditional culture? The Yellow Emperor, honored as the original ancestor of human culture, was a Taoist cultivator 5,000 years ago. When it comes to the philosophical foundation of Chinese culture, Taoism is the first and foremost, and it is virtually the root of Chinese culture. Compared with Buddhism and Taoism, Confucian culture is obviously the CCP's favorite, as the CCP vehemently expounds on Confucianism as an atheistic culture. In fact, Confucianism itself does not focus on belief in God or Buddha, but rather on the principles of the human world. However, Confucius himself lived in an era of faith in God. The Confucian culture was nurtured and developed in an environment of divinity, and faith in God was considered a self-evident prerequisite. Confucius devoted his whole life to restoring the rights of Zhou, with which he believed an ideal society could be built. Why could the rights of Zhou shape an ideal society? A series of questions probing into its core brings us back to faith in heaven and God. Behind Confucius's endeavor to recover the rights of Zhou is the Zhou's religious belief system. The system believes that the Son of Heaven, the Emperor of the human world, rules the people on behalf of heaven, by rewarding people, presiding over governance, and deploying the army and farming. After Confucius, Dong Zhongshu, the great Confucian of the Han dynasty, Dong proposed the famous 3 guides and 5 principles, explaining why the emperor should follow the Confucian idea of benevolent governance to govern the country. His theoretical basis is the integration of heaven and human, and the interactions between heaven and human. All of Confucianism ultimately ends up seeking proof in religious beliefs and divine. What does heaven refer to in the atheistic vocabulary? According to the CCP's explanation, in the Confucian and Taoist teachings of the interactions between heaven and human, or integration of heaven and human, the character heaven is material, referring to the sky or nature. However, this understanding of integration of cosmos and human has been vulgarized by the CCP's misinterpretation as the harmonious coexistence between human and nature. In addition, the party claims that this interpretation is in line with the scientific development vision. This is the expression of the communist specter that distorts the values of the divine culture. The character heaven in Chinese culture is identical to elder heavenly grandfather, commonly used by ordinary folks, as well as the supreme king of the vast heaven, or the heavenly emperor used by ancient people. Heaven has willpower, that is, the heavenly will. It is not the material sky at all. Why should people be honest and have integrity? What is the foundation of being a good person? Can the Communist Party answer the above questions? No, they cannot. Will the core values of socialism be the answer? Upon listening to the teaching of the core values, will people correct their wrong ways and be good, honest, and trustworthy? Even people who put forward the values know these are nonsense. When we talk about the Confucian values of benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faithfulness, or the doctrine of the mean in the absence of its divine foundation, we come to a dead end in the same way that we talk about a fish out of water. The CCP always keeps an eye on using art and literature as a tool of thought reform. In the past 3 decades, the literary and artistic works hailing the CCP's main theme have remained one of the party's most vital means of inculcation. However, the party's culture has established a foothold in the entire society. As such, by decorating the party's culture as the Chinese national culture, or by refining the dregs precipitated through thousands of years of Chinese history, especially the parts that conform to the party's culture, the CCP gets its culture instilled into all people domestically and even overseas. The new tactic that the Specter resorts to in order to corrupt Chinese culture in the domains of literature and art after the Cultural Revolution. In recent years, dramas featuring palace fighting have been very popular. The core content is nothing more than jealousy, mutual deception, and mind games behind the curtains. They most effectively elaborate and interpret the Communist Specter's struggle and hatred. From their production to being popularized, these TV dramas have not received any instruction or guidance from party committees, nor even any promotion from the party media. Instead, they operate in full accordance with the laws of the market. Their popularity stems from the mutual fighting and suspicious living environment of the Chinese in daily life, forged for decades by the evil Specter. Pop culture is full of worship of power and yearning to being pampered by the powerful or to rise to fame or fortune overnight. Therefore, the sinful deception, trickery, and thick black conspiracy on the screens are taken for granted as survival skills. People can find counterparts or something resonant in their real lives. Whoever masters the top political trickeries can win in the cruel competition of society or the workplace. Even for a good person, he or she must have a deeper and more calculating mind than the bad guys so as to overcome the bad ones. One person disclosed online that there was a colleague who watched way too many palace struggle dramas. When she just met a boyfriend, she began to ask her married colleagues how to win in the fight with her future mother-in-law. People uphold these trickeries as wisdom. After the TV drama, The Legend of Chen Huan in the Palace swept the country, a batch of books was published, summing up the wisdom and catering to the psychology of many audience members, such as Zhen Huan teaches me 36 workplace survival skills, and the 80 things that Zhen Huan taught me, and so on. The palace dramas appear in ancient costumes and represent ancient stories and settings. However, the mindset and thought patterns are those of modern people. By wearing ancient costumes and acting as ancient people, these fundamentally modern dramas restored only the ancient facade, but destroyed its inner meanings. Although they are not historical dramas, that does not prevent people from naturally regarding the thick black theory behind the dramas as traditional culture. This is how the CCP first used violence to destroy divine culture, and then instilled the party culture into the people's mind for decades, making people accept the assumption that the party culture is the traditional Chinese culture. After the CCP claimed to commit itself to restoring traditional culture, people's impulse to seek their cultural roots burst out immediately. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that some people genuinely hoped to revive traditional culture, under the CCP's ideological control and atheism's guidance of pursuing personal interest, the restorations can only lead to far-fetched limitations and chaos. In the vulgar, entertaining, and chaotic cultural boom, traditional culture was undermined again in disguise. On the surface, the CCP also claimed to rectify all sorts of disorder. However, the biggest disorder behind all the chaos is the party leadership itself. When an atheist party with a group of people putting money above everything else, and an era of thriving temples merged together, what kind of chemical reaction would happen? With the slogan of "Religion sets the stage, while economy plays," temples have become a new type of investment field. Temples that make contracts are prevalent, with the main purpose of making money through fraud. In tourist attractions, there are also many fake temples, fake Taoist abbeys, fake monks, fake masters, and fake Taoist leaders. Tour guides, interpreters, monks, and Taoists form a coordinated partnership to cheat tourists out of their money by fabricating various excuses such as incense or preventing disasters, etc. Many temples witnessed a weird phenomenon of earning faith money. The Granma Temple in Yi County, Hebei Province, is well known. It is said that any deity that people want to worship can be found here. For promotion, there is an official deity. For fortunes, there is a wealth deity, which is bound with cash. For schools, here comes the learning deity with a deep furrow. If you want to have safe driving, there's even a car deity holding the wheel. The administrators of the temple boast blatantly, whatever deity is missing, we can make one with ease. The abbots label themselves as CEOs, and the temples also want to be merged into listed companies, as it turns out to be a good place to earn money. In the rest of the world, there are churches which have lasted thousands of years, and stock markets known for hundreds of years. People never thought these two can be related. Under the atheist education in communist China, all kinds of strange things appear, some of which have become commonplace. Some argue that the CCP doesn't openly persecute religions, so they seek a way of survival by infiltrating within the religion. However, when the CCP mutated religions into interests and commercial methods, when these controlled religious groups became the CCP's cash cow and a tool to crack down on dissent, these so-called religious faiths have turned into the atheistic and materialistic belief of the evil Specter. Faith lost its meaning, disciples have no destinations beyond death, and people were cut off from the road to return. At this point, the purpose of destroying people has already been achieved without open persecution of religions. Why would the CCP bother with persecuting religions openly then? There is a widely known mechanism in the selection of the Communist Party leader that hardly needs detailed introduction. Evil trumps good, reverse elimination, and victory to the wicked. The system of reverse elimination actually exists in all aspects of communist society. In order to bring society under full control and prevent anyone with traditional ideas from being outstanding, the Communist Party controls all important positions in society and ensures that its evil policies are implemented. If the Chinese society were a human body, the Communist Party would have to pinch shut all the acupuncture points and meridians in it. What are the acupuncture points? The important positions in society. What are the meridians? The channels of talent selection. The CCP's usual method is to work in reverse. Talented, ethical people are not promoted, but suppressed. Those who support and follow the party are more likely to be promoted, which is just like the channels of the human body working in reverse. The result is that currently, the upper middle class of Chinese society is a class of artificial interests created by the CCP. People who occupy the acupuncture points are usually those with a red background in the Communist Party system or those who follow it obediently. Many people complain that in today's China, good people are unsuccessful and bad people are very arrogant. In fact, this is the norm in communist countries. To be successful, good people must first become bad, fawning, two-faced, ruthless, and vicious. While some professionals may be promoted to certain positions, that is simply due to their having an indispensable talent and they have no means of further advancement. Many professionals are scared and reluctant to get involved in politics. Once they cross the red line set by the Communist Party, it will dismiss them without any mercy. This is the biggest unspoken rule in China today. After the CCP took power, it set up the systems of work units and household registration to control society. In the countryside, there were collectivization and the people's communes, as though binding Chinese society in a massive net. Each work unit has its own administration group as well as a party affairs group that seems to be parallel, but in actuality overrides the former. Many of those working in these organizations are skilled backstabbers rather than good professionals. On the contrary, good people who dare to speak the truth, who stick to principles and duties, who are diligent, humane and compassionate, have been systematically eradicated since the very start of CCP rule. The campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries exterminated the former public education workers of the National Party's ruling period, many of whom were social elites. The land reform eliminated the rural elite. The 3 anti and 5 anti campaigns and their capitalist transformations eliminated the elites of industry and commerce. The anti-rightist campaign killed the intellectual elites. Cultural Revolution further added a dreadful blow to those who hadn't been wiped out. Those murdered in the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989 were China's pride, the students who cared for the nation and its people. The persecution of Falun Gong was to suppress spiritual practitioners who want to be good people in accordance with truthfulness, compassion and forbearance. All these campaigns aimed to destroy the elites of Chinese culture and society. The corrupt and licentious Jiang Zemin was totally incompetent, yet the opportunity presented itself to him, and he ascended to the height of power on the fresh blood of the students at Tiananmen Square massacre. After 1999, a multitude of Jiang's malignant minions who actively persecuted Falun Gong, including the imprisoned Bo Xilai, Zhou Yongkang, Guo Boxiong, and the late Xu Caihou, were vigorously promoted. In the eyes of Jiang's gang, the most reliable subordinates and successors are those who have the blood of Falun Gong practitioners in their hands, and are determined to maintain his policies of persecution. People have gradually come to understand that those who sell out to the party get promotion and wealth. Those who drift with the trend can guarantee peace for the time being. The honest and upright either lead lives of hardship or die without a proper burial. Knock him to the ground and kick him again while he's down, as it's said. Golden bells are spots for the sound of earthen pots. Smooth-talking men are raised to high power, while men of merit are cast aside. When vile persons are in charge and noble persons are under control, the country is thrown into turmoil. What kind of people are at the top is a matter of greater societal trends. As Confucius said, employ the upright and leave aside all who are crooked, so that the crooked can be made to be rectified. Placing honest and upright men above the crafty and devious will gradually make the latter become honest and upright. Conversely, placing crafty and devious characters above the honest and upright can only establish bad people as role models and accelerate the decline of the entire society. Promoting the wicked to the highest heavens and trampling good people to the lowest depths is the bleak reality of communist society. This is not a momentary misstep by the Communist Party or the result of upheaval during the period of social change. In order to destroy humankind, the Communist Party must choose the evildoers to serve in its vanguard, leading the crazed rush to hell. The CCP promotes materialism. It encourages people to indulge in a materialistic lifestyle and pursue sensual pleasures and mental stimulation, leading people to abandon their original nature for the allure of material desire. How many people have there been who, after experiencing a world of decadence and debauchery, and letting their hearts be occupied by external pursuits, all of a sudden feel an emptiness of life and spirit? Many unhealthy phenomena have also existed in history, but what makes the Communist Party stand out is its ability to turn all the degenerate things that encourage indulgence of desires into a weapon to assume power control and ultimately achieve the goal of destroying humankind. The Communist Party controls people by using their desires like a rein to be loosened or tightened as it pleases. At first, possession of any private property was publicly denounced, and a man and woman would be criticized even if they held hands. Restrictions were placed on all aspects of material and spiritual life. Then, after the economic reform, everything began to revolve around money. On the surface, the party encouraged the pursuit of happiness, but what it actually angled for was the gratification of desire. When a country bumpkin strikes it rich, they get even more out of hand. Pent-up desires rushed forth in the same way as water bursting out of an open dam gate, flooding everything in its path. The CCP gradually discovered that when the masses are hooked on material pleasures, they are easier to manipulate. It wants to see people's kindness worn down amidst repeated blows, their vigor and energy exhausted by debauched indulgence, and the rest of their time sapped by gambling, online games, or other entertainment. If not brainwashing in an environment where desire is banned, then it's crazed indulgence in sensual pleasure. If people aren't being indoctrinated in the teachings of the evil cult, then they're lost in the surging trends of the mundane world. The party simply doesn't want to see you live as a rational and clear-headed person. Taking humankind as its enemy, the Communist Specter must cut off people's divine roots and cultural connections. The first thing taught to children in traditional education is how to be a good person. It includes the understanding of universal values, followed by profound cultural bearing, rich historical knowledge, and insights. All of these are obstacles preventing the Communist Specter from achieving its sinister goals. The Communist Party immediately nationalized education after taking power, so as to brainwash teachers and students with communist ideology. During the Cultural Revolution, hundreds of millions of youth joined the violent struggles, beating, smashing, and looting, before they were sent down to the countryside and border regions to receive re-education from the poor and lower middle peasants. Later, they themselves admitted that they were raised on wolf's milk. Since the 1980s, the CCP relaxed its grip in the realm of ideology, and the new generation began to harbour hopes that the party would change for the better. The Tiananmen Square massacre, however, crushed their hopes completely. Moving into the 1990s, the youth were mostly the only children in their families, pampered and self-centered. Because of the high-pressure political environment, they stay away from public matters. Some hid themselves in the ivory tower, some went to do business. Some buried themselves in passing loads of exams to study overseas. Selfishness and apathy among individuals became the norm. Keep quiet and make a big fortune was the new motto. To the Western world, The educational stories of glorified heroes in those mainland Chinese standard textbooks seem no different from material for training terrorists. As one writer rightly puts it, the CCP's propaganda and education are never free from cruelty or bloodthirstiness, with the textbooks full of cruel, heroic deeds, such as block bullets with one's chest, hold the explosive in one's hands and detonate it, lie prone and motionless amidst raging flames until being burned to death. Due to the long-term brainwashing in education and strict information control, many young people have no knowledge of factual history or universal values, and the CCP manipulates their nationalist frenzy for fanatical displays. Whenever the need arises, the authorities have them protest on the streets against Japan or America, letting their patriotic mental disorder and collective insanity gush forth. Worse yet, this brainwashing starts from toddlerhood. From as early as kindergarten, the CCP starts to feed children with the poison, implementing the so-called patriotic education. And we all know by heart what patriotic education is. In today's China, people's minds are filled with rot and society is in a state of collapse. The country is hardly a country anymore. The so-called harmonious society is essentially a society that is complicit in and inextricably wrapped up in evil. People's efforts to return to tradition are cunningly derailed, and spontaneous good intentions are ruthlessly strangled. The desire to get rich overnight that was deliberately created by the CCP, the trend of entertainment till death, and the mentality of indulge until you die have made fickleness, viciousness, and numb selfishness the dominating atmosphere of society. No matter how the state media highlights the themes of the times, the zombie-like party phrases, the lies that flow readily from the lips, the prevalence of gangster talk, the deluge of profanity, and their composition are the strongest voice of the times. Those who are able to emigrate leave in droves. The others muddle along, living in anxiety as they wait for tomorrow. In order to destroy humanity, the CCP has been using various tactics of hatred, deception, struggle, and evilness, in addition to mass murder. The craftiness of its deception is terrifying. One of the most insidious tricks of all is that it takes advantage of the kindness in people's hearts. Communism makes use of the divinity in human nature and the hope of elevation, and infuses these with the evil content of its communist cult. Traditional religions believe in God's and divine will, or the will of heaven, while communism worships an illusory, historical inevitability. Traditional religions let people go back to heaven. Communism makes people pursue a communist society. Traditional religions have a clerical class, while the Communist Party claims to be the vanguard of the working class. One characteristic of the communist cult is that one doesn't even need to believe in its dogmas of class struggle, surplus value theory, socialist revolution, communist society, etc., to become a de facto cult member and be possessed by the evil spectre all the same. This is because amidst moral decay, there must be a part of people's thoughts that is in line with the evil spectre, which it uses to take advantage of this loophole and possesses people. As the saying goes, virtue uplifts, vice debases. People whose moral standards have fallen go with the current. Every time when they compromise due to their desires and cowardice is a step closer toward their succumbing to demonic control. In this race to the bottom, they're headed for danger, unable to extricate themselves, yet unaware of the consequences. Isn't that the case for many Chinese people today? The evil spectre is formed by hatred. Murder is its starting point, and it relies on deception for growth, throwing the world into turmoil through struggle and in the process corrupting the human mind, so as to achieve its malicious ultimate goal, the destruction of mankind. At a time when almost all of humanity has been ensnared by material desire and sensual gratification, few are aware of how the evil spectre is cackling with delight as it brings humanity closer to its dark fate. China is a blessed nation, and Chinese culture is endowed with a divine mission. In remote antiquity, when gods created this divine land, they had already prepared an opportunity of reversal for the future crisis, and arranged for hope in the hour of despair. In the moment before calamity, everyone's destiny is dependent upon whether one is able to understand heavenly instructions and the words of the divine.